One of the primary and most significant elements of our response to the ongoing Russian shelling has been the implementation of targeted reciprocal strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. To what extent can this really become the tool that will force Russia to abandon its energy terror? In other words,
the whole port is on fire. There is footage, and we can see the results of our military's work today. Earlier, the Security Service of Ukraine reported that they regularly strike such targets. Zelenskyy calls this long-range sanctions and sanctions of a new level. At the Institute for the Study of War, they specifically note and emphasize that we could not move to a new stage of the war. This was because our partners supposedly were against mirror strikes that would be carried out on the territory of the Russian Federation. But now, finally, we can demonstrate effective work.
Indeed, if we take that OBSE, we need to understand that it is a large oil terminal that Russia uses, including for the export of oil products. So these are truly long-range sanctions, as the President notes, and such hellish sanctions. Of course, they must also be backed by financial restrictions, then as a whole, everything works very well. But what has changed? You see, we have a choice. So we have a choice. Of course, we need to strengthen our air defense, that's a given, and we've discussed this. But there is a choice. When the enemy attacks you, do you only defend yourself, or do you take the war to the enemy's territory, implementing a strategy to move the war onto Russian soil? Are you only defending yourself in a basically passive way, just fending off attacks, or are you responding? And you take the war there and strike back. And here everyone just needs to ask themselves, which is better? Is it better to just defend yourself, or is it better to strike back? What can speed up the cost of the war for Russia, which after all is not just about the economy? Obviously, everyone analyzes the economy and says somewhere the enemy is experiencing a downturn somewhere else. But the real issue is for the economy to start influencing politics. And we understand political decisions. So far, unfortunately, they remain unchanged. Russia continues the war. Will they now stop striking at our energy sector? I'm afraid not. There are no optimistic or good forecasts here. They will keep trying to carry out more strikes. But again, we have no choice but to defend ourselves plus strike their territory. I don't have a definitive or categorical answer as to whether this affects the population there. I'll be honest with you. Whether this is some kind of final straw, whether this will affect the mood there that tomorrow riots or protests will start. But for us, it's absolutely clear that we must see this solely as defense. And within this defense, when you defend yourself not only reactively but proactively, that's certainly better. And
have you heard the criticism from some experts saying that supposedly we're just wasting drones when we send them to Moscow and that we supposedly shouldn't be doing this? What would you say in response to that?
I could respond that, of course, a certain number of drones are destroyed. First of all, let's put it this way. You have to understand the specifics of each attack. It's no secret, let's be open about it, that during almost every attack on Russian territory, a certain portion of the drones may be lost. And that some of the drones may even be intentionally sacrificed in order to distract the enemy's air defense systems, to wear them down so that the necessary drones can reach their targets. Let's look at the effectiveness, just the facts. A few months ago, we saw that it was difficult, almost impossible, for us to break through the layered air defense ring around Moscow. And that's a fact. At best, some drones made it as far as the Moscow region. The attacks of the past few weeks have shown that it is now possible to get through the ring. So what does that mean? That means work is being done. That means there is progress. Otherwise, sorry, there's just no other way. Is it necessary to attack as well? Of course, there are a lot of military targets there. Obviously, we need to break through to push forward. Absolutely. And
plus, Russia is concentrating air defense systems around Moscow. When we try to get there, it diverts air defense from other targets. And then we can see footage like what NATO showed in Tuapse.
Yes, of course, these things are related, I agree.
It's just that on social media, everyone is an air defense expert, an expert on deep strikes, all military strategists saying you're hitting the wrong targets.
By the way, sorry, excuse me, but if you have constructive ideas regarding social media, don't think that all of it is written into the void. If there are truly constructive ideas, constructive criticism, believe me, it's being monitored, including by the armed forces units. If there really are some good suggestions, they are taken into account.
And do you know what the suggestion is? They say launch ballistic missiles. Not just launch drones, but launch ballistic missiles. But ballistic missiles need to be produced, and you can't produce them in a single day. And that's exactly what our military is working on. But there's another interesting piece of news that we'd like to discuss with you. Malawi is accusing the Russian Federation of exploiting African female students to work at the Alabuga plant, producing shaheds. And this has become an informational bombshell both within Russia and internationally. The media picked up this news, but why are they exploiting specifically African students?
We've heard that this could be the case, that Russia is using them, but now an actual country is accusing Russia of labor slavery. And
it's very good that countries are reacting like this on the international stage, because this is essentially slavery. It's illegal deprivation of liberty. And there should be a response from the United Nations to this. We understand that. In any case, attention needs to be drawn to this issue. There is the International Labour Organization under the UN. There are many institutions that should at least voice their protests and explicitly state that they would like to conduct an inspection. Of course, Russia will not allow them in. But what does that mean? It means that, you see, even at the production level, Putin is trying to distance the war from ordinary Russians. Why are they concerned? Perhaps they are monitoring deeper public sentiments. In other words, maybe they see that something is happening among what Surkov called the deep people. Because they are like that with the war until the very last moment. Wagner, so let's clean out the colonies, that's it. But as for the people from St. Petersburg, from Moscow, keep it as far away as possible, this doesn't concern you. What does this mean? It means that it further emphasizes the importance and necessity for us to bring the war onto the enemy's territory and to demonstrate it so that they can see, so that they realize what's happening to them, that the war isn't somewhere far away, that the war will affect everyone. It's just a matter of time. They've run out of people in the colonies, there's no one left to recruit. If they don't mobilize people, they'll start grabbing them off the streets. There's no other way it can be there. And that's why we need to show them. This will affect every one of you. You will suffer because of this. And to show other countries that it's unacceptable to maintain normal relations right now, especially in the context of Africa. Recently, by the way, they made a propaganda film there about the so-called Russian African Corps, about how they're supposedly helping there. Well, you see, a trail of negativity has followed them. First it's Malawi, then in Sudan a military transport plane, and Ilyushin 76 was shot down with a Russian crew, and so on. And actually, that's a very good thing. By the way, this helps reduce Russia's influence in Africa, especially against the backdrop of the upcoming G20 summit, which is set to take place on the African continent.
let's move on and talk about what I think is a very important, truly revolutionary initiative. This is a contract program for the armed forces of Ukraine, for people who want to join the army. The details are still emerging, but the project is currently being presented. The idea is that Ukrainians will be able to sign contracts for periods ranging from 1 to 10 years with guaranteed payments, and they will have the opportunity to receive a deferment from service after completing their contract. Perhaps you know of any other details? And overall, how is this initiative perceived within the armed forces, considering that you are a service member of the armed forces of Ukraine? I
can say that any initiatives related to recruitment, because here we are talking about recruitment, that is, we are talking about both mobilization and recruitment, about creating decent service conditions for those who want to join, especially for young people. There are such people. I know many people. I have traveled to different areas and have seen people coming to train at 23, at 22. Why not motivate them, including with a social package financially as well? I believe this is absolutely normal. The more people we can attract this way, the more people will understand that there are opportunities. The more people see that there are decent conditions and want to possibly connect their future with the armed forces even after the war, the better, because we need trained people. And in any case, in the armed forces, this is perceived, well, I won't speak for everyone, but let's say among those I communicate with and know, precisely as attracting young people. It's very important for young people to join, especially those who are motivated, especially those who are ready to take on tasks in the future. This is very important. And that's why I hope that this program will also bring success. We can understand there is always a choice. Right now, a young person is 24 years old. You can wait until you're 25, and if the war is still ongoing, you might receive a draft notice from the Territorial Recruitment Center. Or you can sign a one-year contract, receive payment, choose your unit, and continue to serve. So there is a choice. It's not just that the state is putting you in a box saying, no, you will serve and we will only send you here. No, I think you have a choice. Make your decision. From this point of view, of course, it does provide at least some mechanisms for choice.
We will wait for the details of this program because it really is important. There's a lot of talk also in the information space that Russia is signing up and hiring soldiers on contract, and many people are joining. Why not in Ukraine? There is still no such system here.
Everything is about the specifics of the contract. I mean, in general terms. People come to sign the contract, yes.
Thank you very much for being with us today. Oleksandr Musienko, military expert.